Welcome to It Is Us, a show that describes and tells about disability issues. And we are thankful to the Extended Dream Foundation and Center for Disabilities and Development and the fine staff at Public Access TV. Tonight we're very honored to have one of our best Board of Supervisors here to tell us how it's going in the county and what she has to do as a supervisor. This is Janelle Rettig. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Keith.
So, could we start by telling the audience what are your duties?
County supervisors are defined in Iowa Code, and we have several pages of duties in Iowa Code. In Johnson County, there are 5 county supervisors. In other counties, there are 3, but we have 5. County supervisors do everything from mental health, disability services to managing the budgets of where you vote, the sheriff's office, the county attorneys. We maintain 950 miles of roads. We do social services, we do public health, conservation. Our duties are very wide and across a lot of spectrums people don't realize.
Okay. What are the main things on the agenda lately?
Well, you know, we are preparing to get ready for our budget, which is a multi-month process. We're just a few months into this fiscal year, but already we have to prepare the next one. Some of the things going on are mental health disabilities reorganization.
Okay.
And we can talk about that in more detail. We are doing a lot of roads projects. We have on the ballot a courthouse annex for the courthouse, and we can talk about that a little bit. We are doing a lot of conservation projects and roads, and right now we have out for public bid some of our block grant funding. So our funding that goes to nonprofits is coming up, and people can apply for those funds.
Why is it Johnson County has 2 more supervisors than many?
Lynn County was the last kind of major urban county to go from 3 to 5.
Yeah.
It used to be 3 was pretty common, but Johnson County's had 5 forever. And the reason you want 5 has to do with open meetings laws. If 2 supervisors are together talking about something in a 3 county or a 3 supervisor county, they're actually having an open meeting law, and that, you know, violating open meeting laws, and I think that's a real problem. You want 5 so that you can talk to a colleague but not be having a meeting. And it also, the job is just very difficult. In a county our size of almost $100 million budget, it takes 5 of us to get a lot of the work done.
Can we go into a little detail about the mental health reorganization?
Sure. You know, you may know that I voted against us entering this region.
Yeah.
It's a 9-county region stretching all the way from here to Dubuque. I was very concerned that we would have some of the services that we valued here, particularly services for disability services, be cut by the region. I didn't want decision making to be done by other counties. Johnson County has been capped at about $3.1 million in change for MHDS. That stands for Mental Health Disability Services, which you know, but our audience may not. We've been capped at that for 17 years, but that's $3.1 million we really need. And I was very concerned with the state government not calling disability services a core service. And I didn't want a region to make decisions to cut programming that's important to us. But let's, even though I'm very apprehensive about the region, I would have preferred to have been in a region on our own or with us in Lynn County. I'm hopeful that it will work out and people won't notice too big a difference. But that all depends on the region keeping caseworkers locally and keeping managers locally. And I would really hate it if you had to call Dubuque to get something done.
I think a lot of people would.
Mm-hmm. And I've been very concerned, and this isn't the region's fault, but residential care facilities are no longer in favor, and I'm very worried that Chatham Oaks is going to end up closing. Other parts of Iowa have already lost their mental health facilities, and I'm really worried Chatham Oaks may end up closing because it's not a favored way to do things anymore.
If and when it does close, where are those individuals going to go?
I think that's the big question because some people don't function well in group homes. I mean, they would like people to live more independently or in group homes, which is great on paper, but there are just some people that's not possible for them. And I have friends that have family members that say their family member will never be able to function like that. I think that's a really big question and something we all should be concerned about. The other thing is people, for example, that have an illness like an eating disorder, and they've been in the hospital, they need to transition back into their life slower. And so Chatham Oaks has been a stopgap to still help them recover from their illness and for a temporary stay. And I'm concerned about those people because the hospital is the wrong setting and home may be the wrong setting. So what happens to them during those few months of transition?
Janelle, besides the other counties, how many individuals are Johnson County responsible for?
It depends on what program you're talking about. It can be as low as 50 or 60 in one program and as high as 400 or 500 in others. I mean, so, it's our caseworkers carry a pretty heavy load, and they're now required to do all this paperwork that really affects their timing. But it depends on the program. One of the other things that has changed in mental health disabilities funding is Medicaid started picking up some of the bills. So we used to have an MHDS budget of about 13 million. It's now down to about 8 million. That's not because anything was cut, it's just that the government's paying for it directly.
Okay. And does that cut hurt any of the other programs?
Not yet, but I am really concerned about disability services not being a core service. And if the region doesn't have adequate funding to have more money than they need to do core services, they could begin to cut some of the programming for things that aren't designated core services. You're seeing a little bit of that happening with people in their workplace who need an assistant to be able to go to work. And some of that money has been drying up recently. And I took a call from a mother, last year who was really upset about that because her son with a pretty serious disability, going to work was the most important part of his week.
Okay.
And they cut the funding for, and that's a federal decision, but they cut the funding for his assistant to help him go to work. And she's like, so what's my son supposed to do? Just sit at home and die? I mean, because getting out and going to work was really, really important to him. And I'm extremely worried about that. If we don't adequately fund MHDS services, I think you'll see programs like that getting cut, which is the disability side of MHDS, and I don't think the state government's talked about it enough.
What would you want to see happen?
Fortunately or unfortunately, I think you need to have more money in the system, and I think you need a lot of local control over that money, because we know best on a local level what services are available to here
Yeah.
and how people respond to them. I think it's really difficult when those decisions are made by people who are not on the ground, who are not dealing with people with mental health and disabilities on an everyday basis, to know what programming is working, how individuals respond.
Yeah.
I think caseworkers are a lot better at figuring this out than some pencil pusher in Washington, D.C.
Or even in Des Moines?
Or even in Des Moines, because every individual responds differently, and what may work for one individual won't work for another. Going to work may be the best thing for one individual, and staying at home with therapy may be better for someone else.
Yeah.
And I just don't think you can pigeonhole people.
No, you can't. And as a person with a disability, it gets a little irritating to see others put on the back burner for the sake of cutting budgets.
I think that's really troubling, and in this election cycle, you have candidates pretending like they're for MHDS services, but they voted to cut the funding, or they voted not to backfill, or they want to do this take back, so they would take back the revenues we have in reserves. I think that we as a community have to hold them to a higher level of accountability, and not let them get away with the 30-second commercial that's just outright not telling the truth. We need more money in MHDS. We need to manage it well, and we need to be flexible on the programming people receive.
So when do you foresee the NADD plan in full set?
The regions are already functioning,
Okay.
but all the money has not been merged. That will take place next year. In theory, everything will be completely merged next year in 2015. And you will, but the region has been meeting for over a year now, and you know, all the jobs and everything are getting worked out. But for example, right now they're working on a new executive director for our region, because the director who's been the interim is retiring.
Are there any future roadblocks that you see in getting this plan instituted?
I think the region is functioning really well. You know Rod Sullivan.
Yeah.
Rod is our representative on the region, Supervisor Rod Sullivan. Rod believes that the current supervisors that are serving in the region work well together and things are going well. I just worry that every time there's an election, that can change. And so I think the biggest roadblock would be the folks in Des Moines cutting more funding and deciding to program the funding the way they want to, as opposed to let the regions operate.
And I personally don't think there's enough input from the people that need the services.
You know that we had a mental health planning council.
Yeah.
Well,
I was on it.
right, the
with you.
county. So they're going to have a regional kind of advisory, right?
Yes.
But you were going to have to drive up to 100 miles away for a meeting. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to do that. And so I think that that's one of the things that needs to get worked out, is how do users of the system participate in an advisory, and we need to be able to use Skype or teleconferencing or something so people don't have to get in the car and drive an hour or 45 minutes away.
Sometimes when plans are made up and put together, they look so easy to put into place but when we actually put it into place, there's a lot of difficult roadblocks.
You know, I asked this question when they were voting on this, and I never got an answer. But I said, you tell me one client, one constituent
Yeah.
in Johnson County who will receive better services because of this plan. Just one. Name me one. And nobody could answer that question. So I don't think constituent services, client services, were the number one motivator for this reorganization. The number one motivator seemed to be from some people to cut money
Yeah.
and for other people to get services to more rural counties, which I think is a really noble goal. But even here, we don't have enough psychiatrists. I mean, if you want a psychiatric appointment in Johnson County, good luck finding it.
The number one problem I've noticed is that we have so many facilities that people move here just to be serviced. And that puts a strain on the county.
That's absolutely true. I mean, I believe Johnson County is the coolest place in the world to live. And so a lot of people want to move here. A lot of people with disabilities, a lot of people who are elderly, a lot of young people. I mean, this is just a neat place to live.
Yes.
But because the population's growing, they come with a variety of needs for services. And one of them is the population of people who are living in poverty is skyrocketing in our county. We have 18,000 Johnson County residents that are food insecure.
Wow.
Who don't know how they're going to eat or their family's going to eat this week. 18,000.
And because of the coming fall and winter, they will be more noticeable.
Absolutely. And, you know, affordable housing. People who work really good jobs can't afford to live in our county.
No.
The rents are skyrocketing, the property values are skyrocketing because the vacancy rate of the apartments is 0.5%. So if you've got an apartment, don't let it go because
Right.
there's very few apartments that are sitting empty.
And as far as I know, anything truly accessible is taken.
Yeah, I mean, accessibility in housing in general is a problem, but in affordable housing, it's a huge problem.
Yes.
Many of the apartments are up a couple of flights of steps, and the bathrooms are small, and you know, wouldn't accommodate anybody who needed to use a chair or needed grab rails or anything. And so I think accessible housing is a huge problem at all ranges, but in the lower, you know, the affordable range is a really big problem.
And it's very hard to get the Builders Association to agree on some of the building codes.
You know, I thought we were making progress for a while with the accessibility building. And I know the Livable Community of Johnson County's task force has worked on this, but you know, a few builders are more progressive in building accessible, but it is not an industry standard in our area, and we need to make it that.
And it's very hard to get them to agree on what we call universal design.
And you know, universal design can be small changes or a total rebuilding, and I think a lot of people would be happy with some small changes to get started.
Yes.
But the universal designed homes aren't that much more expensive.
No.
And even people who are able at this point often get injuries, they have surgery, they get older, they need accessible housing, universal also.
I'm glad you brought up that point, because many people still believe universal design only helps one segment of society.
It's just simply not true. I have Lyme disease. I had a really bad bout of Lyme disease, and I would walk and I would get to, there would I would need a curb cut because even stepping up the step was tiring for me. And when I was doing that, I would realize how many curb cuts aren't there. Now I'm a lot more healthy than I am now, but I wish our house that we own was universal design. Our laundry is in the basement. When my knee is acting up, that's hard to get down there. Our bathroom is small, so if when I had surgery, I couldn't get up from the toilet.
Yeah.
And so universal design homes are good for everybody.
Yes.
And if you think you don't need it today, you're fooling yourself because within a few years you'll have a bad ankle or knee or something.
And that's the the biggest obstacle to get builders to understand it's not a waste of space. It's a good design.
Well, and
for everyone.
we need people who are buying homes to demand it.
Yes.
Because I just think it makes your property values better if your home is compatible to a lot of different people who may buy it in the future. So
Yeah.
I think they're making a mistake when they don't build at least the restrooms and the kitchen and laundry facilities that is zero entry and those facilities that can accommodate different people.
And as the population grows older, universal design can help many people stay in their own environment.
And you want to know what costs money is when people can't stay in their own home.
Yes.
I mean, the longer we can help people stay in their own apartment, condo, home, whatever, the better it is for the taxpayers because, getting into a nursing home or assisted living is really expensive.
Yes. And it seems to me, and this is a personal view, that when you're in a nursing home, it's almost like a dead end.
Some of them, but we've got some nice nursing homes around here that they don't call them nursing homes, but they're pretty cool. They play cards and they have ice cream machines, and but the regular nursing homes are kind of depressing. But the new ones are more of a transition of living where you can move through different stages of it.
And I know one thing also, that the population of people with disabilities are living a lot longer.
And those of us, we're all living a lot longer, so people who didn't have a disability for all their life will eventually have one. Because while they're still alive, their knees or ankles or hips or whatever are wearing out.
Yes.
And so people who didn't realize they were ever going to have a disability now have them because they're living longer.
Okay, Janelle, what is the biggest thing that will be on the agenda for next year?
I think it's the courthouse annex. We simply are out of space.
Yes.
It's an old building that's a beautiful and historic building, but it's no longer meeting our needs. And with this being on the November ballot, if the voters vote for that, we will be designing the building, and that will take all year to do. If they do not vote for it by 60%, then we'll be back to the drawing board. So one way or another, I think the courthouse annex will be the #1 agenda item next year.
And that's one particular reason I don't vote there, because even though it's my district polling place, it's very hard to get in and out.
If you, people with disabilities who use a wheelchair, it is nearly impossible to function in the courthouse. You can't serve on a jury. You have to sit outside the jury box. You can serve, but you're not treated the same. There's nothing about the building that's accessible. We have our own employee that uses a wheelchair, and she has a hard time getting around the restrooms, everything. And so, there's a lot of reasons that people should consider the courthouse annex. 6 more rooms, quicker trials, safety and security, but also accessibility.
Yes.
It is just not a friendly place for people with disabilities.
Okay. And is there anything else on the agenda that would be noteworthy?
You know, I think the biggest issues facing Johnson County are growth. So many people are moving here, the demands on services. I mean, right next to us at PATV is the Johnson County Ambulance Service.
Yes.
They're setting records almost every month for call volume. And so supervisors have to pay attention to a lot of things at once. We have roads that are crumbling. We have record demand of food. We have record demand of ambulance, medical examiner, court cases. So dealing with the growth in a way that the taxpayers can afford is a really complicated issue.
Not only food, but shelter.
Shelter, affordable housing, social services in this county, the nonprofit agencies just have a lot more clients than they used to.
Yes.
And those clients have demands. So, you know, I just think that everything, it's cool that so many people want to be here.
Yeah.
And I'd rather be growing than shrinking.
Yes.
But growing has its own set of issues, and it requires our attention, and how we manage our budget in a way that we can afford all this is really important.
In other words, the budget should grow with the population.
And unfortunately, it isn't, because tax increment financing districts are taking revenue away from the county,
Yes.
and the state has taken revenue away from the county. So our revenue is not growing in parallel with our growth of population and demand on services. And that's creating a lot of problems.
Do we have any idea where that money is going?
Well, a lot of it is going to corporations that are building businesses in our county, and the state is going a lot to out-of-state corporations. So TIF dollars is when you capture the county share and the school district share, and you spend it on that project. And so the county then loses the revenue from the new project. But the commercial property tax rollback, a lot of that money is actually going out of the state. And that's a problem for us, because we need those revenues, and we can't just continue to raise property taxes to offset it.
Janelle, before we close tonight, if you had a crystal ball, what would you want to see happen?
I would really like to see people with disabilities be able to be more integrated in our community than they already are, and have even a better quality of life and places to live. I'd really like to see our poverty rates lowered,
Yes.
so that there aren't so many people living in poverty. And I want us to maintain our quality of life that we have and let it grow. I still believe this is the best place on the planet to live, but we have to work at that every single day.
Yes, we do. And it takes people like Janelle Rettig to force the issue upon a lot of deaf ears. But Janelle, I do want to thank you for coming tonight.
It's been my pleasure.
And I hope the audience has a better understanding of government function, even if it's only on a county level. Thank you for joining in. See you next week. And I hope, Terry, you get well.
We miss you, Terry.
Very soon. Thank you. Have a good week. Bye now.